So this lecture is, of course, if you read the name, it's going to be on after Joseki. It's not really that difficult to look at a once you reach a certain strength. It's not that difficult to look at a sequence of 6 or 7 moves and then play out those 6 or 7 moves against an opponent and then say, "Haha, I've just played a Joseki." But figuring out what to do after that Joseki ends is sometimes a little bit more complicated, and there's a lot more variations. There's a lot more things that can happen, and what it really requires is understanding not only what the move is, but why the move is played. So, with that in mind, we are going to take a look at about a dozen pretty frequent Josekis that I'm sure most of you are already pretty familiar with, and we're going to see what people can do to them and what you should do afterwards. So with that in mind, let's get started with our first one, which I'm sure many of you have seen maybe a few times before. I'm sure many of you are just a little bit familiar with this one. But yeah, I put that in there myself to remind myself to not go forward beyond those points. Don't worry about the stops. So yeah, this is of course probably the first Joseki that anyone learns when they're playing Go. Of course, I guess that varies from person to person. But the question then becomes, what are, obviously depending on what's going on the rest of the board, but just as a general rule, what are possible moves that might be considered playable for continuations? Any suggestions? Let's see, we have R12, naturally. Anyone else want to volunteer? You guys are quiet, come on. Frozen Souls should wait until other people have a chance, although apparently everyone is deciding to be really quiet today. So, there we go. So, R15. Rukus, come on, always multitasking. Take the corner out, you mean with S17. Okay. Yeah, all definitely interesting moves to look at. Oh, and another corner. Come on, we're talking about locally. Well, I mean, yeah, you can talk about L17, I suppose. But, really we're talking about, things you can do to White's group that's local. So yeah, these are some good moves to look at. Particularly good one, if you haven't seen it before, is A. This is a really powerful continuation to add to your repertoire of moves if you're unfamiliar with it. The basic idea behind it, of course, is that White is almost always going to defend like this, and then yeah, we just started. And then Black is going to play like this. And at this point, White is usually going to need to wedge in right now. If White fails to wedge in, many players will consider Tanuki here when they're still Q players. You should almost never Tanuki here, because if you do, Black's going to get this. And this is really, really thick for Black, usually making Black a very, very happy player. So White generally needs to wedge in here to weaken Black's shape. And then depending on the position, this is oftentimes a playable move for Black. And so what Black has done here with this continuation is essentially make an exchange. He has allowed White to become much more solid on the right side. It is now absolutely clear that White is not going to die anytime soon. White is not going to be split anytime soon. And by the same token, Black has built himself a new wall. Now, obviously, this should only be done in a situation when you can actually do something with your wall. So, if White has a really, really weak group, maybe around here, or if Black has, a powerful formation to, develop a Moyo, perhaps, something along these lines, this would be a very good continuation to play. Can White fight instead of R12? White can always fight. So yes, if White really, really wants to counterattack, he can attempt to do this. But I would warn you that this is oftentimes a very dangerous move. Black will usually do this, and now you will get a wild fight. And white's base is not safe. Black's two stones aren't 100% safe either, but white has this weak group here and this weak group here, whereas black merely has a single weak group. So unless you have stones close by on the board that can help you, this is locally, this is usually not amazing for white. Inurukas. Okay, I guess that's a fun one. So let's take a look at some of the others. So yeah, this is a very basic continuation. I mean, this isn't anything special. This is just take the corner, threaten to take white's eyes away. Not really much else to say about S17. Another move, actually. This move you can sometimes do, depending on the situation. Usually you want support. So for instance, if black already has a stone here, then one thing you can do is to play this move. And this is a really fun way to slip inside and just really mess with white's area. Yeah, white has some real shape problems to deal with. So not always pleasant for him. Oh, well, if white does this, black will slip in here and take the eye space away. Now, it depends, of course, on the rest of the board. I mean, if the center is completely open, then you're probably not going to be able to launch that strong of an attack on white. But if you have a developed center, then you've just ensured that white doesn't have two eyes yet, in addition to making yourself a few points on the right. You know, if white attempts to... if white attempts to do this, black can attempt to essentially split in half. This is not going to end very pretty for white by most assessments. Another move that's very interesting to look at is this one, which many of you may have seen before. This is when black is strong in the area, and you really want to split off the R11 stone. This can be a very good move. If white attempts to connect underneath, what is black's continuation? What does black do from here? Yes, cross-cut. Cross-cut is very severe here. If white goes for the capture, he's more than welcome to it, and black cuts off R11. Now, remember, black does need some support here. I mean, if white does this, and you know, white has strong stones around here, then it's probably going to be black who is the one who's attacked. So, you know, all of these continuations are almost wholly dependent. Yeah, then white gets to laugh at black. All these continuations are wholly dependent on you having the right position locally. So you need to be able to support these continuations when you consider them. Always keep that in mind. If white decides to play safer, and or if white really wants to keep R11 safe, he can play this move. But what's the continuation for black here? Not a very complicated move. Yep, just plain and simple, R15. And voila, black has just expanded his corner. Now, white, of course, in return gains himself a stronger shape on the outside. But black has made himself a good chunk of points in the corner. So this is another continuation to consider from here. So, well, it really depends. You know, this is one of those things where it's just a total it depends. It always depends on the situation. And in the right situation, it can be a fantastic move. So let's say white does this. What should black do from here? Ah, there you go. S14 is a great move from here. This is kind of sneaky. So if white attempts to do this, it just reverts back into its old variation, and you get exactly the same result. If white goes up to connect, black can generally go in here and make himself life. Now, if white attempts to demand that black die, black has two choices. Black can actually just choose to sacrifice the few stones in the corner and give these to white. And white really hasn't gained that many points, and black has gotten himself a Panuki and Sente to play perhaps something along these lines. Yeah, well, white's shape is stronger, so I would... Cilium is maybe a little strong, but we can say that black is satisfied if this happens. If white just continues to extend, of course, black can just make himself live on the second line. Now, of course, if white's center is particularly valuable, then this isn't great for black. But, you know, white still has 2 cutting points to deal with. And if black has any strength at all in the center, white will not be satisfied with this result. So, both very interesting ideas. Now, one move that you will oftentimes see in some of your games is this move. And this move tends to frustrate some people when they don't know how to deal with it, because it just seems that no matter what you do, white ends up happy with his result. And in reality, black has a few choices in how to respond to a move like this. So yeah, S14 is really the simple way. And of course, if white goes here, it just reverts to exactly the same way that we've been talking about. And if white, in some sort of strange fancy, decides that this is a good move, which it's not, black obviously just plays here, and white looks foolish. This is on after Joseki. So if black wants to make pure thickness, he can consider this. And then just go up like this to make a wall for himself, which is also a possibility. So that's some of the more basic continuations for this Joseki. There are more, of course. We might get to some of them at the end, but there's a lot of other variations I want to take a look at. Q12. Yeah, Q12 is probably one of my favorites, actually. So I'm in very strong agreement with you. So, nope. What was that? Here. So here is another one that I'm sure almost all of you have seen very, very often. This is, of course, when white, rather than territory, wants a potential moyo or flexible shape. And depending on the position, white or black may decide that he wants to come into it. Well, yeah, R12 screams at you, right? So that, of course, is the classic continuation for black. And it really depends on the situation, though. For the sake of argument, we will say that white has stone there. And so black goes in here, which is perfectly possible. And so now the question is, what are white's moves? Does white have to play Q12? Or maybe is there another move? Or what's the deal? Any other moves that come to mind besides the obvious? Let's see, P14, R14, R10. Kobayashi is with the what was I saying? Kobayashi depends. Kobayashi is slightly different than this. We can talk about Kobayashi in a bit. R16, S16, all interesting moves. Let's these are good 4 moves to look at, I think. Oh, P12. Ooh, okay, definitely an interesting one. So this move is an interesting one, and one that I think is very valuable to start off with. This has 2 purposes, actually. Sometimes you will find this move more often in handicap games, actually, when white's intention is to attempt to kill the R12 stone. White will essentially do this, and then play up here, and then black will do something along these lines, and then white will often play either this move, now that he has extra help, or something like this, even, if white reads carefully. And white's intention, of course, is to attempt to kill R12. And this is an extraordinarily aggressive way to play, with lots of holes in the shape, and it can get into very, very complicated fights. So in an even game, I would not recommend doing this. Would not recommend doing this in an even game. Yeah, if white really needs to live with his stones, of course, there's this classic way, which I think I've talked about in a past lecture, is a great way for white just to make himself live. Very nice and simple in the corner. And black can usually end up connecting out to his stones. But that's not usually that commonly seen. This move is actually a mistake here for white. Usually white does not want to play this move, because if black just responds here, white has a bit of a problem. White's shape is still incomplete in terms of his groups, and it's not easy necessarily for white to just connect up his stones. Yeah, it gets rid of the 3-3 invasion. So I would not recommend doing this. P14 is, I will call P14 a very difficult move to play correctly. This is a very, very special purpose move for when you are making a global attack against black stone for the overall position. It's not an easy move to play properly. It can lead you to very poor results if you don't play it properly. Be very cautious, I would suggest, when using this move. This move is another special purpose move, although not as difficult to play properly. This is a very, very Moyo-oriented move. When white wants to build a large wall, and he doesn't mind if he gives black the corner, then this is usually the way to play. But this will end up giving giving black a fair chunk of points in the corner. So only play this if you are very confident that your wall will be valuable to you. Last off, let's look at, of course, the classic move, which is by far and away the most commonly played move. So what are now black's choices from this point? What does black do? Q11. Any other ideas? Is this the only move possible? Q13, R8. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? R11. Good chunk of moves. Oh, and R15. Okay. Good moves to look at. Good moves to look at. And R10. Alright, we can look at R10 too. Ooh, S9. That's creative. Okay, we can look at S9. Okay, so good moves to look at first. So this move. Let me be very blunt and say that 99 out of 100 times, this move is wrong. Don't play this move in your games. It's played really, really often, but it's just really not a good move. Because white's just going to cut you, and your idea, of course, is to play like this. And, well, first off, the first problem playing this way is that white can do this. And this is really, really frustrating for black in terms of making points. Black can live if he really pushes himself. You know, black can manage to live in here. But it's not exactly the prettiest life in the world for black. And white is usually thrilled with this kind of result. Yeah, white has just built utterly, utterly, utterly massive thickness, and black has made tiny, tiny, tiny life. And this is, of course, what you're expecting to occur when you make that Hane. Yeah, don't live like this. Now, the idea, though, behind it of using this weakness at A is a good idea, but the key is you have to play it immediately. Don't do the Hane first. You don't need to do the Hane first. Now, this is a move that can only be done when you have two ladders, and those ladders are very, very important, because if white goes here, black now needs two ladders to make this a successful move. White could capture this stone, in which case black will need this ladder, or white could defend here, in which case black will need this ladder. And without both of these ladders, this wedge move will fail miserably and your position will collapse. So read those ladders very carefully before playing this out. Now some people say that, oh well, black can white can just connect underneath, and it's true that white can connect underneath, but that isn't necessarily a reason for black to be too sad. Exactly, black has just made free thickness, and white has lost a few points in the process. So black really isn't sad if white wants to do this. You should play this every time as black and be happy. One move actually that I should bring up, just because it's important, and this particular move really angered me for a long time because I didn't know how to respond to it. And it greatly had, yeah, R12 is no, we have other variations. We should say Q11 should only be played if the ladders work. Q11 should only be played if the ladders work. This move is a very interesting move that was played against me a while ago, and it really made me think. Oh, sure, I can, yeah, we can mark what ladder breakers are. So, our first ladder, of course, is white going out like this. Hits right up against like this. And our second ladder is going to have white go out like this. Basically, right off the bat. So you need both of these ladders to succeed if you are going to wedge at Q11. If you do not have both of these ladders, your position will not end well. So, another interesting counter that's sometimes omitted by when some players do lectures, but really shouldn't be. Yeah, if white has stones in those areas, well, if white has a ladder breaker in those areas, don't wedge at Q11. Absolutely. So, what should black do, though, if white does this? Any ideas? What is black to do? Yeah, this one really made me think for a long time. What should I do? We have a P13. We have R10. Two suggestions for R10. We have O11. Okay, good moves to look at. So, for starters, this move is actually one of the correct options. It really depends on the situation, but this can work. This can work acceptably well for you, depending on what's going on. Usually, black cannot. Well, sometimes black can resist like this, but this is a really aggressive way for black to attempt to resist. If black just wants to be purely nice and safe, he can play something along these lines. Yeah, black can usually play something along these lines if Moyo is good for him here. And this is a big trade for territory for Moyo strength. So, one possibility. But that's not the most aggressive way to respond. The most aggressive way, actually, is to Atari here first. And then have a fight like this. And this can get pretty wild. This, of course, still depends upon the ladder. Because if white does this, and then this, black still needs that ladder to make it work. If white resists like this, black has a few options here, actually, not just one. The simplest way for black to play is just to go like this. And then like this. And this usually will end up pretty well for black. And you can technically say that, oh, well, wait, white might be able to get out of this ladder, or white might be able to escape from this net, but black usually ends up pretty well if he tries. P13 is still really lacking on liberties. So this is usually pretty good for black. Usually will end okay. But yeah, very aggressive fights can start when you attempt that. So let's say as black has the ladders here, and so then white now has to play like this, because white is very scared of those ladders. And then this is one way to play. And now critically, unlike black starting off with that Q13 cut, black has made himself third line territory. rather than second line territory. Plus, white has this 2 cutting points, which is really annoying for white. His wall is imperfect. Oh, like this? I will say sometimes. Usually you don't want to do this because it gives white a lot. And black's 3-3 point is still open for invasion. Plus, white has a Panuki. So usually you don't want to do this, but I can't say never. There probably will exist there probably will exist a situation where this is okay for black, depending on the situation. But I would say as a general rule, no, it's not good. So let's say you're black, and so let's say that you're the black player now, and you can't play A because you don't have both ladders. So you need to play something else. So one move that was suggested was this move. This is actually a more global move than a local move. If the R8 point is really valuable for black, if white just has a huge moyo that he wants to build in that area, then this is possible. But in this case, all black can do is just build a little one-space extension here. And then white can kick him, and this isn't that amazing for black. So in this particular case, it's probably not a great idea. But in some cases, it can be rather valuable. So definitely keep it in your toolbox for special cases. But that's more a global position than local. This is an interesting move, but it seems very low. And I just fear once again that white will play the same exact move, and then the best black has is here. And black's shape just feels awkward to me. So I would not be happy with black's position here. So the other correct move that you should keep in mind is just the pure and simple extension. And now white actually has a variety of responses to this extension. White could, of course, just play back here, which is very common. And then black can just make himself live. And there's really nothing white can do about this. If you don't like the fact that black can live here, then, don't play Q10 as white. It's just as simple as that. When you play Q10 as white, you are saying that I accept the fact that black can invade in here and live. And I'm going to make a wall in exchange. And if you don't like that, don't play it. So the other move, though, that's very important to remember as white is this move, which is basically trading corner territory for thickness. And like almost all the moves we're going to discuss today, this is one of those moves where it really, really depends on the situation to decide if it's good or not. So black will wedge up there, and white will defend, and black will Atari, and white defends, black defends. And now this move, a lot of people will look at it first and say, oh, well, that's too slow. But what white really needs to do here is connect, pure and simple. This weakness cut is a huge problem for him later on if white does not fix it. And 99.9 out of 100 times as white, you will need to fix it right now. It will be the correct move. And then black here will usually play this to just eliminate the 3-3 invasion, eliminate all the AGA, and just make the corner. So yeah, it's an exchange. White has made magnificent thickness, truthfully, and black has made himself a 30-35 point corner. And it's a very large-scale exchange, I guess is the best way to put it. So if played in the proper situation, it can become very good for you. And when played in the wrong situation, it can become very terrible. But yeah, you need to be able to use this thickness. Either develop it with a stone like Q4, or have a weak black group in the area. And yeah, white, of course, has Sente, which means that a really cool move like 04 can be played here, which is just monstrous for developing your moyo. So another good move to look at. Sometimes, very, very rarely. How is what? How is 04 a good move for developing your moyo? Oh, it develops a lot more territory. It also stops the black approach. If later on it is black's turn, black can potentially play this move. And this will really reduce white's potential. If white attempts to respond just normally, and they play out a standard variation, like so, white's going to get a good chunk of territory, sure, but it's not a moyo anymore. I mean, it's a good chunk of territory, but it's not like white has this imposing moyo. It's not the only move, of course. I mean, there are other moves. Some situations you might consider even playing k4, but really depends on the overall position. But that's just an optional continuation for white, depending on what's going on the board. I mean, if there's like an open corner like on this board, you might just consider doing this. But, really just depends. So, yeah, those are the main lines for what can happen in this case. This move will usually leave black with inferior shape. So, usually black should avoid this. So let's look at our next variant. As soon as I find it. Here we are. This is a really, really good one to know. So I'm sure all of you have seen this many times in your games. It's a relatively common Joseki, but and the initial continuation is very well known, I think. This will happen, and this will happen, and this happens, and then this happens. And everyone just ends up here. And sometimes white will play another move, like this to fix the shape. But sometimes white will, sometimes white will continue here. And sometimes white will play elsewhere. Sometimes white will just do something else and leave the stones here. And so the question is black, how does black continue this? Any ideas? We have P13. And we have Q13, Q14, O11, and O12. Good moves to look at. And R5. Well, R5 is more global than local. I guess it really depends what's going on in that corner. But we'll focus on these mainline moves. So this move doesn't really work that well for black, because white can just respond here. And now white's cutting problems are fixed, and black's shape is not particularly thrilled, because black now has this annoying problem with the R9 cut. So usually not ideal for black to do. This move is a move I guess I will call tricky to play correctly, but very, very powerful when done in the proper situation. This is a whole shape attacking move. This is designed to just attack white's entire shape. And if white just defends there, black will play something along these lines and attempt to go for a global attack. Now, you need to have help to do an attack like this, because if you don't, you're just going to end up with a group of 3 floating stones that white is going to counterattack. So it's a very situational move, but if you want to attack the whole group, that is the way to do it. This is almost as good, but O12 is usually a bit better than this move, because white will just defend, and if black attempts to do this move now, white can usually just do this and be happy with himself. And black's 2 stones don't look particularly thrilled. So that leaves us with A and B. And the most common move that you will see, and probably what we could call the mainline correct answer, is P13 here. It's a very powerful wedge. White will defend like this, and then pull back, and then black cuts off. And now white can actually still live in the corner. So this doesn't give black a huge territory yet, but regardless, this is a way for black to connect up his stones and to force white to not be able to attack either black's O14, O16 or Q16 stones later on by splitting them. So this is one way for black to play. Many players will play Q13 because they fear when they do this move that white is going to do this. And sometimes that's a good fear. If this is a legitimate fear, then you're right to play Q13. But on an open board, this is black is pretty happy with this kind of situation. This is, I guess we could say, not an easy fight for white to manage. At a minimum, at an absolute minimum, black can just do this, and even this is good. But if black really wants to be aggressive, he can just play another move here, and then white has no choice but to fix his shape there, and then black can continue his attack, and the fight will continue. Double Hane, where? Where is the double Hane? Oh, like here? Here? Ah, well, this isn't a double Hane exactly, but it is an aggressive Hane. It's pretty tricky. There's a lot of complicated variations. I won't say it's inherently bad, but you need to have very strong reading skills and be very confident in your fighting abilities to attempt a fight like this. Usually it's not necessary, because this just, unleashes all sorts of crazy complications. And, yeah, an M13 is really annoying to deal with, so usually you don't need to be this aggressive. Usually just a pure and simple extension or a threat like this is more than enough. Usually that's sufficient. But yeah, so in those cases, then it's better to just do this. But of course, you're giving white stronger shape, so it's a trade-off. Even though you're playing maybe a tiny bit safer, you give white stronger shape outside. So yeah, not really that much variations from that line. But who knows, the R11 move is one that we always see again and again and again and again as black. Q9, where? Here? Oh, Q9. Oh, no, not that one. Q9. Really? Huh. I can't say I'm that familiar with this move. I guess it can be good in the right situation. Yeah, F is more of a whole board situation move. Yeah, it really depends what's going on in the corners. If you want to press black, I mean that's more of a standard. Whether you want to press black or not, rather than like a local tactical continuation. So yeah, it depends on the whole board. So I guess there are situations where this could be good for black. I don't know. Seems okay for white. I mean, I suppose black can play like this and get himself a fine result on the side. Yeah, this is one possibility for black. Just depends what black wants. So definitely something interesting. But besides R11, does anyone know what is another really interesting variation that black will do here? What is another mainline variation that black has here besides R11 to consider? Whoa, lots of suggestions. So let's see, we have Q12, we have Q13, we have R15, P12, we have Q10. Okay, we can look at Q10 too. This is a good variety of moves to look at. Oh, Q14 as well, okay. Alright, wide variety moves. Okay, so let's start off here. This move usually isn't that good for black to do. I haven't really seen it before. I guess my problem is just seems like this is difficult for, well, it's difficult. It really depends on the situation. Not a huge fan of this for black. I don't know. I would prefer white here, I think. Complicated. Yeah, it really depends on the top. I mean, maybe you could play this way, but it doesn't seem like a standard variant. It seems unnecessarily complicated. There's also, of course, if black just wants to play, or white just wants to play simply, there's just this to do. And then white does this. And usually this is more than enough for white to be satisfied with himself. So because of variations like this, you probably won't see the wedge that often. Yeah, white looks pretty much better off there. So going up directly is an interesting move. Yeah, this can lead to some very, very interesting fights, and this is another ladder-dependent situation. So the question is, does does black have himself a rather interesting ladder? And if black does have an interesting ladder here, who the ladder is good for? If black does have a ladder, if white does have a ladder, then white can get a good result here, like this. And white is very happy usually to get this, but it's entirely ladder dependent. If white cannot get a ladder, then he can't play this way, and white has to play like this. And black usually will respond here, and who knows white's move from here? White to play? Who, me talking about you? Never. No, no. Let's see, we have P10, O10, S10. All very interesting moves. P10 actually is played sometimes, so this is another interesting move to consider. Sometimes this is done, but this can lead to some really, really nasty complications. Yeah, really, really nasty. Usually it's much easier and simpler for white until you get much, much better at reading to play this move. Because black will respond there, and white can squish the stones, and then white will usually play like this, and the fighting will continue apace. And both sides will continue fighting in a very, it's still a very complicated fight. So yeah, many, many variations from here, depending on what's going on the whole board. But yeah, definitely many fights to be had if you're going to just push up like that. This move is usually not correct. Only in extremely, extremely rare cases can you play like this. Because at first it looks really nice that you've managed to split them in half. But the problem is that first off, black's shape is going to get all beat up. And this is just a difficult fight. Why P12? Ah. Why not P11? Ah, because of this. This is usually why we don't do P11 now. If black splits white like this, white can consider doing this now. And this is very painful for black. Whereas if black plays like this, then usually white is fairly satisfied by playing this way. And it's a difficult fight for black. Black's shape is very flawed. Yeah. I mean, so yes, you can technically split white by doing this, but it really, really, really depends on the global situation, if you can actually do this with any effectiveness. Right, right. So if black has a strong group nearby, then yeah, you can consider this. So this is a move to consider in very, very special situations, when you have great, great thickness in the bottom right. Yeah, exactly. It's a very special purpose type of move, not a general move to just play because it's a Joseki. It's a move you play because it's a very special purpose fighting move. So let's look at some of these other moves. This move usually isn't right because although you can maybe build a wall with it, like this, usually it just makes white too solid. White is getting some really nice fourth line territory, and black still has this cut to deal with. So we can't even consider black's thickness to be solid yet. Yeah, black is usually not very happy with this shape. So usually that's not right, but one of the white P15 cut. Oh, you mean like this? Like this? This actually gets very complicated. If white wants to attempt a cut, there's a lot of very interesting variations that can occur. For example, like this. It looks at first like white can just make an easy capture, but something really interesting happens when black wedges. And this can happen. And it can get very, very, very wild. So we can't consider this necessarily a great variation for white. Attempt to cut through there. So usually as white we would want to cut like this. True, it's annoying, but yeah, usually that's not a good way for black to play. But the other variation that is, I think, very important to look at is R15, and this is another standard variation. And usually, white's response is R11, and then black plays S14, and white plays like this. And now the old-fashioned way, actually, was to play S13 here immediately, and white finishes up his shape like this. And sometimes playing S13 is still good. But in modern Go, you will actually see players hold off on playing S13, even though it's a really good move, and even though it's 100% Sente, people will hold off because R12 still has a little bit of AGA. So for example, if the board looks like this, later on in the game, black can consider playing this way, and just descending. And then maybe pushing up there, and going back for safety. And now white's shape looks kind of problematic. Now, granted, white can capture S14 and hurt black's corner, but black has also hurt white in return. So this is, once again, another kind of situational move. It really depends on situation whether or not it's good. I should also note that if white attempts to do this, black can actually play this way, because white cannot do S10, because his shape is too weak. So if white attempts to come out like this, black can just resist like this, and white probably isn't particularly thrilled with something like this happening. So that's one reason, but still, nevertheless, S13 is a very, very big move. But so let's assume for a moment that S13 has been played, and it is black's turn, and black wants to play a local continuation in this area to maybe either attack white's group or build himself up a wall. This is a very particular Tesuji. Ah, yes. P13 is the Tesuji. This is a very, very fun move. If white attempts to resist the move, black can just play here. And this is really frustrating, because black essentially shreds white's shape, and white really has no way to resist. If white attempts to resist like this, black will usually just respond here. And then white needs to capture, and then black comes back here. If black attempts to resist again, usually this is pretty painful for white. Even though white may be able to get this move, white still is not happy about this kind of result, naturally. So white can't do that either. In fact, white's only response here is capture. There is, I will say, no other good move locally for white besides capture. And now black takes this move. And so this continuation is gote for black, but it gives black a fairly decent new wall to play with, and it also potentially attacks white's eye shape. So this is a very good continuation to know as black. Yep, new toys to play with. Now, as white, there's a good continuation, whether or not black has already done this. There's a very good continuation for white in the upper right corner. What is white's fun move to play with in the upper right corner? Any ideas? What is white's fun move? Ah, P17, yes. Very good. This is a very, very strong move, because if black attempts to play Q17, this is a horrible, 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 horrible mistake that he should never, ever do. Why? Why is this such a horrible mistake? What is the next move? Let's see, we have, I know you know, but no answering for you. Let's see, we have S15, we have O17. Ah, yes, S15 is the correct move. This looks a little bit silly at first, but black, of course, has no choice but to capture it, and now suddenly, white can take this move. And black has absolutely no choice but to capture, and then white takes this. And now black just cries himself to sleep, because this result is kind of disgraceful for black to be forced into. What, you can't hear the audio? Hello? Oh, okay. So yeah, usually black will need to play like this and make himself pretty solid. Oh yeah, I speak great Japanese. And the problem with this is there's still a lot of AGA in the corner for him to deal with. So for one thing, there's still a peep there. And white can consider playing this way. And the corner is still not entirely safe, because white can still make life for himself outside, and there's still some reduction potential. So this is still playable for white later on. So yeah, those are some of the more interesting variations to take a look at in this particular case. So let's go on to our next one. Where is it? Stupid SGF. Alright, we're going to move on from the 4-4 point. This is a Joseki that most of you have hopefully seen a few times before. It's very common. And for the sake of argument, we will say that this is the formation that has come up for black. And now normally the proper move for white to play here is to jump. White usually should jump, or maybe, you know, there are other moves too. I mean, maybe sometimes this is okay, sometimes some other move, but usually some sort of defending move. No, the cap has been done. I'm sure it has, but some sort of defending move. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that white is foolish, and he does not defend again. And so then the question is, well, what does black do about it? So let's take a look. There's, of course, the classic move, which is N17. Yeah, that's the classic idea, and there's nothing wrong with it necessarily. What if white just plays nice and calm? Something along these lines will occur, and white will just nicely connect underneath, and then finish up like this. And black is pretty happy here, because black has just ripped out his eye space, and later on he has himself this really nice peep right here, and maybe a jump right here, and white is very, very, very sad. Very, very sad. But one of the reasons why some players hesitate to play this way is that white has this move. And this is a good reason to, a good thing to call this move is just, you know, the epitome of complicated. This move, you know, Lee Chang-ho actually doesn't like N17 because white can play M16 here. He actually has a different move that we'll take a look at in a second. But this is a viciously, viciously complicated response. So black can push up here, and then play down here, and then he can make a cutting point, and then defend himself, and then descend here. And now it gets very complicated after black plays this move. Because the question is, well, what does white do about this? And, you know, white could consider extending upwards, and now it's a viciously complicated fight inside. To tell you the truth, I don't know every single variation that can happen in here. There are more than I can count, and I have seen some very, very wild fights erupt when two strong players attempt to play this way. So who's alive and who is dead is a question that is not easy to answer, even for strong players. Stronger than myself, I should say. I'm not that strong. Hard to say. White might die, black might die, depends on what happens next. So, only SE can answer that question. Yes, only the score estimator can answer that question. So, what some players will do, and what the move that Lee Chang-ho originally came up with, was actually this move, which is a really cool response, I've always thought. So if white attempts to play on top of it, black has this really nice move. And then black can play up here, and if white responds on top, black just connects underneath. And white's shape is maybe slightly better than doing the main way, starting off with N17, but this is much safer for black. If black attempts to cut this off like this, what does black do about this? Any ideas, black to play? Yeah, N16 is a really, really fun move here. Naturally, if white cuts off the one stone, black is more than happy to separate white, and white is very, very sad with doing this. The white should never play this way, because this is just terrible. And so white is usually pretty sad. So in general, white will respond here, because those are very, very nasty continuations that you may see. Oh, O17, that's right. So O17, I think, is a little bit less common, but still, I suppose, deserves a mention. The reason being is that this will happen, or this, I should say, this or this can happen, and yeah, you can have this, but black can't live locally, huh? Oh, did I mess up the variant? I don't think this is usually a great idea for black to do, although I could be mistaken. Any suggestions, York? No, this is usually not something that black can do. I would... Okay. Yeah, I would strongly recommend, if you're black here, either to play this move or this move, because they are much easier to play with as black. But yeah, let's take ourselves to the next one. So this is another kind of situation that I'm sure you have played out on occasion, and it's another one where, in general, the correct move for white is to jump up like this, or once again something similar. But on occasion, white will not do that, and so then the question becomes for black. Well, what does black do about it? So, any ideas? What are black's moves? Oh, M17. Yes. Well, this is the classic move. And of course, if white responds like this, black is usually very happy to... This is horrible, absolutely horrible for white. White should really just cry at this point. He has no territory, his shape is flawed. This is a horrible way to respond. White should never play this way. But a more fierce way for white to resist is with N18. And this is a far fiercer resistance. And so at this point, black has a few different choices. Black has a few choices here. My favorite choice starts up a very, very vicious ko. Any ideas? How does this ko start? Does anyone know? Yeah, K16 is one move actually, but K16 doesn't start the ko. N17, not quite. Good guess. Ah, K17. There we go. Yes. Yes, York. I know that you know the answer to these questions. I have no doubt. Yes, this is the way to start the ko. And this will usually occur. And, if white attempts to, or if white attempts to seal black in like this, it will, it's still ko. There's no way he can really stop this. So that's one way of playing as black. Another way of playing is like this. It's perfectly acceptable. White will usually play something along these lines. Yeah. They can't differentiate the value of ko. Yeah, no, that's a perfectly legitimate point. So this is one possibility to continue playing, and basically white can manage to make himself life, but black isn't all sad. Black isn't all that sad about it. Funnest. Usually M16 isn't correct though, because I mean there's all sorts of ways that white can resist. I mean at its simplest, white can just usually do this, and it becomes not good enough for black to do now. Black's move seems kind of wasted because white is already connected and black stones are just kind of floating in the air. So this usually is not good enough for him. So yeah, that's a pretty quick one. And then we'll end with a few other variations from more unusual openings. So a few simple ones that aren't particularly complicated. This is one I'm sure you've seen before. What will usually happen at the end of this is if black wants to continue, one way for black to continue is like this. And white will usually respond like so, and black will defend himself like this. Now, if white attempts to resist, this gets a inferior result for white generally. Depending, sometimes you can cut on either side. It depends on the whole board position. But if you cut on one side, suddenly R14 works perfectly to capture these two stones. And white is not particularly thrilled that this has happened. Another way, if you want to make yourself a larger corner, you can play this way. And now you can play like this. And so black makes himself a slightly larger corner, but in exchange, white gets himself a tougher shape on the outside. And black's shape is still flawed as well. White still has this, which is potentially pretty problematic for black in some positions. So you should be cautious when considering that. Another move, and this move, by the way, is more of a fun move. I would not recommend playing this in any of your serious games, because usually it's not that great, but you know, if you just find that one in a million situation when it can be fun, then give it a try. This move is one of my favorite moves. And white can resist, and then white can hane, and white will win this capturing race. But black has something really, really funny here. If black cuts here and makes a sacrifice play, he can crunch up white's shape, and white has no choice but to capture, and white has no choice but to fill. Yeah, with a stone tower, and white will win the capturing race. But black makes himself a really, really nice... Yeah, black sacrifices a few points here, but he makes himself a really, really thick wall. So, yeah, well, this is a very situational move. I mean, on the one, first off, white gets sente here. Second off, white doesn't look like white's corner is that huge, but remember, white's already captured white has 5 stones captured. No, white has 6 stones captured, and those points, plus sente. So this really depends on the situation, if you're going to do it. But don't play this as a usual move. This is a very, very, very special purpose move. Just a fun one to show. Yeah, white has sente, which is not... Oh, no, what? Black has sente. I'm sorry. Yeah. Black has sente. Yes. So that's another fun one. Alright, so let's take a look at the last few. So this is one common thing that you may or may not find in some of your games. You respond with a diagonal, and then white responds with a 3-space jump. Now naturally this is, although sometimes, well, in some situations, like if white stone is closer, this is a good move, because when white stands up, he only has a 2-space extension from his wall, and that makes him inefficient. So the reason why white goes here is now black does not want to play here, because if black plays here and white stands up, it's a 3-space extension, and this is very good for white. So black usually won't do that. So yeah, instead, black will usually play this, and I just see players as white get so frustrated in trying to respond to this move. And really, it's not that complicated for white to respond. What's white's most common response? Oh, S13. S13 is a possibility. Sometimes S13 is good. We couldn't. I can't say that S13 is inherently bad. Yeah, there's potential with it. Q13, not as often. Q13 isn't as good, actually. White's shape has too many problems to really consider Q13. Ah, P15, yes, that was the move that I was looking at. P15 is a very good move. If black attempts to just come out like this, for example, this gives white a very good situation to, at a minimum, make strong shape. And now black stones are weak as well. So this is usually too nice to allow white to have. If you want to be aggressive, actually, you can consider doing this. And this can get nice and aggressive. Oh, what? Black wedge? I suppose black could try wedging. But this seems seems hard for black to make it that amazing for him. It gets very complicated, I think. Oh no, the wedge is a powerful move, but only when used in the proper situation. But the normal black response is like this. And then black will kick here. And then black will defend here. And white will defend here. And at first this looks like black's result is nicer than white's. But, we have to remember, first of all, that black still has a nasty weakness here. And second of all, white's shape is fairly solid here. So this is usually considered a pretty par for the course result. Just a good thing to know. When I attach a P15, he usually jumped to N16. Ah! N16. Huh. I haven't seen that one that often. Well, the idea, of course, I guess, is to leave R13 with more AGA. Well, the intuitive choice for me, I guess, would just be to do this. Seems like a fine way to play. If black goes out of his way to resist like this, does the cut work? Interesting. No, the cut doesn't quite work. Because black can resist like this. Although there is some interesting AGA. Ah, this is a very, very fascinating life and death question on black's response. So if black attempts to go here, white has a very creative response right here. And suddenly, it looks annoying for black. If black attempts to cut like this, white can play like so. And then black can connect under, and white can, the fighting can continue. But yeah, that's a very nasty, nasty testagy. So what usually will happen is black will play this move. And white will take here. And white makes himself a very nice corner. It should be noted that even though white's shape looks flimsy, it's not that flimsy, because black can't play this way. Yeah, Q15 doesn't work. It looks like it should, but it doesn't, because of Atari. So because black cannot do that, then this, my understanding is that this is the proper way for white to respond to moves like that. But yeah, N16 is an interesting move. I hadn't really considered it before. I'll have to remember that one. So yeah, last one. This is a really fun one that a lot of people, even Don players, make mistakes with how to continue up this. So I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, have seen this on occasion. This is a big, big scale Joseki. It's a very fun way to make an exchange of territory and thickness. Yeah, it's easy to die if you don't play carefully. So sometimes black will play here immediately. But actually, this is more common these days as white. And then black will go back. And now it's white's turn to follow up. And this is the most active response, and 99.9% of the time, as white, if you're going to play in the corner, you should play this way. And if black just plays nice and passive, white is thrilled to get this move. But if black decides to play more viciously, it can get tricky. But playing the correct response as black is not easy. This is a very common mistake I see, but usually this is not good for black. Usually, I say, because this will happen. And then white will play here, and then suddenly this move just gets really annoying. And then white can play like this, and black has no choice to play up here, and white will get this move. And Well, R16 is very safe and simple, but the reason why this move can be risky is it can lead to a ko, as we're going to see right now. So black can actually resist this way. And now it's a very, very vicious fight. And white can play here, and black will jump out, and white can Atari once to keep its shape strong, and then white can take some liberties away. And then black has no choice but to capture in here. And now white has a critical decision, the simple move or the complicated move. The simple move for white is just to play T16 here. And then black has a really, really clever strategy when he plays this way. It's actually really cool. White cannot ever play S19. Because if he does, he kind of dies. And white dies a very horrible death. So usually what white needs to do is just ignore it. And then ignore it. And then ignore it. And so this is a very safe way for white to play, but essentially white makes an exchange here of captures. Now, if white wants to be more vicious and keep it all for himself, white can play this way. But the problem with this is that it turns into a ko, and a two-step ko at that. So white is attempting to keep everything, but it is more difficult for him to actually do so. So these are more advanced variations, but nevertheless they are good to keep in mind. And then I think we have one more before the end. Or was that my last one? What about S17? When? Oh, you mean... Wait, when? What, this? Oh, instead of R16. Oh, literally like this, huh? I guess I would not be a huge fan of it because it doesn't really work. The problem is right now. And then this move. And if white attempts to do this, black just does this. Or white just does this, and kind of messes black's position up. So it looks cool, but doesn't quite work, I don't think. But yeah, I'm getting really tired, so let's just take a look at our last variation for the evening. Very, very simple Joseki. I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with this one. So now white wants to follow up with this position. So there are many actually possible moves, but the one we're going to look at is white playing here. And there's a few choices that black has. This is the simplest choice for black, and it's very safe territorially, but it allows white to do this potentially later on, which is an aggressive way for white to build thickness and push black low. And sometimes that's unacceptable for black. So sometimes black will actually play this move, or even this move, if black wants to resist that. But if he does do that, what's up? Yeah, R17 is fine. There's nothing bad. It's a fine move. It's one possibility. This is another choice that you can definitely consider. Both are playable depending on the circumstances. So here, white can cut. And we've seen O16. O16. Oh. Possible, I suppose. So this is a really interesting situation to keep in mind and remember. There's a subtle point here that will come up. You'd be surprised how much it comes up, but you should always keep in mind. So the classic idea for black is to play like this, and then white comes underneath, or white descends and gets this incente, and in exchange for the 2 stones, you know, black makes himself a bigger and more safe corner. But there's another variation that black has here if he wants to be fancy. And you should be cautious about being fancy. But if black wants to be fancy, he can play this move. And this is really fun, because if white just decides to respond normally, and then black goes here, what has this S14 exchange done for black? Who can tell me? What has this exchange done for black? Well, S16, you mean S14. Well, the critical point here is that white can no longer take S14 in Sente. If white takes S15, for example, it's Gote. White has to end in Gote. So what black has done has essentially stolen one of... well, of course white can Tanuki. Absolutely, I agree. But white can no longer be assured of taking these S14 points. In fact, there's a 50% chance that black will be able to get this before the end of the game. And this is very valuable when we compare it to the situation where white has S14. Nope. Now, this is very valuable compared to just giving white S14. It's a very, very big yosei to remember. But there's a risk to it. And the problem is that if white wants to be complicated in response, white can respond here and essentially steal the corner from black. And black has no choice but to respond here, and then white has no choice but to respond here, and now you have a gigantic messed up fight, which has resulted from white attempting to steal the corner back from black. Very, very complicated. I should note if black attempts to resist, it becomes a ko. So actually in this case, because white has this Atari here, white actually gets a very advantageous ko for himself to fight. But if black plays the other way, with this move, and then they have their little ko fight, now it is a 2-step ko for white to play with. And it's a vicious ko for a very large corner and a very strong position in the area. Just a subtle point to end on. So that finishes up basically this lecture on after Joseki. We can maybe talk about O16 another time, but my voice is getting sore and I need to go to bed. So we'll talk about O16 another time. I hope all of you enjoyed this lecture on after Joseki. Ideally, you learned a little bit about what can go on after these very common Joseki that you will all see again and again in your games. And hopefully next time you see them that you will be able to respond better to them. So hope to see all of you next time. And with that being said, farewell.